Mike's hot, camera's hot, launch it.
Okay, so Christa, tell us your name and your occupation and your affiliation for the front of the tape.
Okay. My name is Christa Backson, and I work at the Community Environmental Council. I've been with them for about 10 years now, maybe going on 11. Great organization to be with, promoting clean environment.
How old were you in 1969?
I was just turning 14 right in January, right before the oil spill.
Say that. In 1969, I was.
In 1969, I was 14.
What do you remember about how you first heard about the oil spill?
Well, we lived right across the street from the beach there where the spill was washing up at Ledbetter, and there's a bluff there where we all hung out as kids and played. So we heard about the spill. We all ran down there as it started washing up, and it was on the evening news. And so we were, hanging out down there on the cliffs. There's a bunch of children and of all different ages in that neighborhood, all lined up on the bluff, looking down. And over the next days, and the first day, you could see all these oil blobs and thick mats of oil washing up on the beach. This is a beach that we played on from childhood. It was our playground, so it was very devastating and surreal to see all this black goo just lined up all along the shoreline.
Although you might not have understood what was happening, how did you feel about it?
It was kind of scary in seeing the seriousness of the adults around us and the type of equipment that they had. There were bulldozers on the beach and people dressed in all these suits and outfits that were completely covering their bodies to protect them from the oil penetration. It was kind of scary just wondering where it was all going to lead, and it seemed like it was just this continuous flow coming in. It didn't seem like they were, it's not like a simple fix. So,
Did you have a sense of confidence about that it was being handled correctly?
It was interesting because they were taking bales of hay and spreading the hay all out. I mean, and I had no concept. I'd never seen anything like that before. So just the process of cleanup was like watching a show, standing up on the cliff and watching all of this activity take place. And like you said, I mean, I had to have confidence that they knew what they were doing. It was something that had never happened before, so we were all depending on the public and the community and the people who were supposedly in charge to clean it up. And there were dead birds, there were pelicans and seagulls, and just lying on the beach, saturated in oil. So that was really upsetting.
We're going to cut right to the end questions. In as concisely as you can state it, how did the 1969 oil spill affect your life?
It just gave me a much greater appreciation for our natural surroundings and our natural beauty and how vulnerable they are and how our actions can affect their safety and their preservation. So it led me into kind of a field of environmental work and more conscientious living. Now in general to get away from fossil fuels, and we have solar panels on our house now. We try to ride our bikes to work. We try to, my children ride their bikes, and just trying to be conscientious in general of how we treat our natural surroundings and what our actions do to either preserve them or damage them.
If you were speaking before class of high school students, what would your recommendations be to them as to how to protect the coast?
As far as oil spills go, get away from fossil fuels. Try to look into alternative energies, solar panels, wind, and promote any kind of organization and activities that you can that educate people to alternatives to fossil fuels, and then taking steps yourself and your family and your community.
And if the president appointed you to a blue ribbon panel on how to protect the coast, what would your top 1 or 2 recommendations be?
No offshore drilling would definitely be number 1. Probably dumping in plastics would be another one.
Do me a favor, Christa, make that a whole sentence, include the, her question. So if I was appointed to a blue ribbon panel, I would recommend.
Well, if I were appointed to a blue ribbon panel, I would probably recommend that we end any kind of offshore drilling, as well as limiting plastics, as far as plastic bags, plastic drinking bottles, any type of plastic packaging that's going to end up in the ocean and hurt animals and cause pollution in the ocean.
Okay. Well, we got anything that we need to go back over?
How much time do I have?
Do you, how,
5 minutes or so.
okay.
Let me run.
5 minutes. Okay, so he and I do this.
Okay.
I ask him, then he asks questions. We get little differences of inflection, and we'll take the better of the.
It's still hot. Okay, Christa, what is your name, occupation, and what environmental organizations are you associated with?
My name is Christa Backson. I work at the Community Environmental Council, and that is the main environmental organization that I'm involved with. I am members of Surfrider Foundation, Environmental Defense Center as well.
And thinking back to 1969, how old were you and what was your occupation then?
I was a middle school student and I was 14 years old.
How did you find out that the oil blowout had occurred? And once you found out, how did you react to it?
I don't remember exactly how I first heard. My feeling is that it probably would have been on the news.
Let me change the question.
Okay.
When there was a point at which there was oil in the water but none on the shores, tell me about the first time that you saw oil on the beaches and how that made you feel.
The first time I saw the oil on the beaches, I was just shocked. I was stunned at the devastation that seemed to be covering the whole sandy area that I played on as a child, and just the seriousness of all of the crews that were down on the beach frantically working to contain it, just kind of exuded this whole very serious, dismal type of vibe that, was obviously there to be taken seriously, and that it was going to have a huge impact on our community.
When you're that young, an event like that, which I guess could be described as monstrous, but in youth, it tends to affect your thinking for the rest of your life. How did that 1969 Santa Barbara oil blowout affect the rest of your life?
It made me much more conscious of preserving our natural surroundings and using actions in your personal life that created awareness with others and within your family and yourself to always think about what you're doing that could either create a safe environment, safe, clean environment, or do an action that's damaging.
How do you feel, personally, how do you feel about the California coastline?
I love it. I grew up on the beach. I spent a lot of time on the beach. I surfed, I kayak. I can't imagine living far from it. It's one of my favorite places.
So if you could describe what you believe is the most ominous, the ugliest threat to the California coastline, what would you say that was?
Another oil spill definitely would be the number one.
And if you were standing in front of a bunch of high school students, hundreds of high school students in the gymnasium, and you could ask them a favor, and that favor would be very much oriented towards protecting the California coast, what favor would you ask them?
I would ask them to consider alternative fuels in their life so that we can sort of start weaning ourselves away from fossil fuels, and particularly living on a coast, any kind of offshore drilling could be just put at rest and would never be a threat again, would be the main message for protecting the coast.
Mm-hmm. And if President Obama had a few spare minutes of his time and he were to call you and he would say, Christa, when it comes to the California coast, I'm President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, I'm going to grant you one wish, one favor. I'll grant that favor. What would you ask? What favor would you ask President Obama?
That he eliminate all offshore drilling off the coast of California and any other coast as well.
Let's take that from the top with the answer to I would ask President Obama.
I would ask President Obama to eliminate offshore drilling.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Very nicely done, very quickly done.
Good.